In the year 1140, Aubrey de Vere, the son of a Norman knight who served under William the Conqueror, built a castle at Hedingham in Essex. It would be the home of the de Vere family for 5.5 centuries. In 1141, his son Aubrey was created the first Earl of Oxford by Empress Matilda. In the centuries that followed, the Earls of Oxford would fight in the Crusades, and in many major battles including Agincourt and Bosworth. Hedingham Castle's Norman keep survives to this day, and is owned by a descendant of the de Vere family. It was here on the 12th of April 1550, that Marjorie, the wife of John de Vere, the 16th Earl, gave birth to her only son. He would be named Edward, probably after the boy king, Edward VI, who sent John de Vere a gift of a golden chalice for Edward's christening. Nothing is known of Edward de Vere's early years in Essex. As the son of a noble, it is unlikely he would have attended one of the petty or grammar schools that were established by this time, and would have been educated at home by private tutors. He is known to have lived for a time in the household of Sir Thomas Smith, a distinguished scholar, and former Secretary of State under King Edward VI. Smith, an early convert to Protestantism, had lost his offices on Queen Mary's succession to the throne in 1553. Although there is no evidence that Smith actually taught the young Edward de Vere, it is possible that Thomas Fowle, a Protestant clergyman employed as a tutor by John de Vere in 1558, taught Edward in Smith's household. Fowle had been a former Fellow of St. John's College, Cambridge, and held more radical Protestant views than Smith. He would later serve as chaplain to the father of the philosopher and statesman, Sir Francis Bacon. And it was in the same year that Edward was enrolled at Sir Thomas Smith's alma mater, Queen's College, Cambridge, as an immature fellow commoner. Within a month of Edward's arrival in Cambridge, Queen Mary's reign came to an end. Her successor was Elizabeth, her Protestant half-sister, and daughter of Anne Boleyn. It is possible that Edward's father, who held the hereditary title of Lord Great Chamberlain, accompanied Elizabeth from Hatfield House to London, where in January 1559, she would be crowned Queen at Westminster Abbey. After March 1559, Edward's name disappears from college registers, and he may have been living back at Hedingham in August 1561, when Queen Elizabeth visited on a royal progress. The following year, John de Vere died and Edward became the 17th Earl of Oxford at the age of 12. From now on, his full title would be Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxenford, Lord Great Chamberlain of England, Viscount Bolbec, and Lord of Badilsmere and Scales. As a minor, the young Oxford could not automatically inherit Hedingham Castle in the family estates. As the de Veres had been granted felons through knight service, Oxford's estates would be administered by the Court of Wards until he reached maturity. The Master of the Court was Sir William Cecil, the Queen's closest advisor. Cecil would be responsible for Oxford's upbringing, and Oxford would be required to continue his education at the Cecil household in London. In Oxford's time, London was the largest city in Western Europe, with a population of 100,000. Although only one bridge connected it with Southwark on the south side of the Thames, its population had already spread beyond its medieval walls. The young Oxford's arrival in London is recorded in the diary of the merchant, Henry Machin.
On the 3rd day of September, came riding out of Essex, from the funeral of the Earl of Oxford his father, the young Earl of Oxford, with 70 horse all in black, through London, and Cheap, and Ludgate, and so to Temple Bar.
Oxford was brought to Sir William Cecil's mansion, Cecil House, which was located to the west of the city walls, in the Strand. Its site is now occupied by the Strand Palace Hotel. At Cecil House, Oxford would begin each day learning to dance, and then study French, Latin, cosmography, riding and shooting. In a letter to Cecil, his tutor Lawrence Lowell wrote,
"I can see that my work for the Earl of Oxford cannot be much longer required."
However, Oxford's education would continue. In 1564 and 1566, he would accompany Queen Elizabeth on her royal progresses to Cambridge and Oxford. Although the degrees Oxford received from both Cambridge and Oxford universities were only honorary, in February 1567, he was enrolled at London's Gray's Inn to study law. However, on the 23rd of July 1567, when Oxford was 17, he was involved in an incident at Cecil House that left a man dead. The man in question was Thomas Brinknell, an undercook in the Cecil household. Oxford had been practicing fencing with Edward Bainham, a Westminster tailor, in the yard behind Cecil House, when Thomas Brinknell appeared. Oxford had stabbed Brinknell in the leg with his rapier and he died soon after. The following day, 17 jurymen at the coroner's inquest, which included Oxford's servant and a protégé of Cecil, found that Brinknell had been drunk and instigated by the devil, and had thrown himself on Oxford's foil. As a suicide, Brinknell was denied a Christian burial and his widow, Agnes, was deprived of his worldly possessions. Thomas Brinknell's death does not seem to have harmed Oxford's reputation at the time, and in 1569 he received his first vote for membership of the Order of the Garter, the highest order of chivalry, founded by King Edward III. In November of that year, Queen Elizabeth faced a major threat to her throne. In the north of England, powerful Catholic nobles led by Charles Neville, the Earl of Westmoreland, and Thomas Percy, the Earl of Northumberland, rebelled against her. The rebels had hoped to place Elizabeth's Catholic cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, on the English throne. However, the rebellion failed to gain popular support. By January 1570, the rebellion had collapsed and its leaders had fled into Scotland. In the spring, an English army under the Earl of Sussex would pursue them across the border. Although Oxford, who had recently recovered from illness, made preparations to join Sussex's forces in Scotland, nothing is known of his role in the campaign. By the summer of 1570, Oxford is likely to have returned to London. The books he purchased at this time show an interest in the humanities. As well as the Geneva Bible, Chaucer and Plutarch's works in French, he also purchased folio editions of Cicero and Plato. Oxford was also interested in occultism, and became acquainted with John Dee, the Queen's astrologer, who in 1592 would refer to favourable letters from Oxford that he kept in his possession. In February 1571, William Cecil was raised to the peerage as Lord Burleigh, and 2 months later Oxford reached maturity. He was now able to sue his livery, meaning that the process of regaining possession of his father's lands from the Court of Wards could begin. At the beginning of May, Oxford emerged victorious at a royal tournament in Westminster, and in August, he made known to the Queen his wish to marry Anne Cecil, daughter of Lord Burleigh. Burleigh noted in his journal,
August 3rd, 1571, the Earl of Oxford declared to the Queen's Majesty at Hampton Court his desire to match with my daughter Anne, whereto the Queen assented.
On the 16th of December 1571, Oxford married Anne Cecil, here at Westminster Abbey, where kings and queens are crowned, and under the gaze of Queen Elizabeth herself.